Hey, welcome to Next Level Method Podcast. I'm Richard Ryerson.
And I'm Matt Lilly.
And we're here to help you take your life to the next level. Let's get started. All right, well, we had Michael Proctor on the show, local guy, financial planner. His company is Leading Edge Financial. He's been a financial planner for the last 10 years, and he found this company. And, we were wondering where we take this. When we talk about money, it's kind of an elephant in the room. And then, when we talk about energy, elimination, relationship, purpose, we really wanted to talk about the relationship of money.
Right.
So I think that's when we started this conversation, that's what we would try to do. Do you think we accomplished that in this conversation?
I think it's a conversation we don't spend a lot of time on this podcast. And so it's something we just wanted to introduce kind of as an initial topic to come in and say, okay, this is an element of life. It can cause a ton of stress. We even covered it in the podcast, how much stress it can cause when we don't have an abundant mindset or even just financial literacy, any of that. So it's not, I think it was a great conversation. It's not maybe what you're going to expect from a financial planner or financial conversation. Really, we looked at more of the psychology behind it, kind of some of the hang-ups with it. We even questioned, why is it such an elephant in the room always, it almost seems. So I think it's a very entertaining podcast, a very entertaining topic, and glad he was able to come on and talk with us. Yeah, for me,
it reminded me again, we spent a lot of time talking about abundant versus scarcity mindset, and that's what I really reminded myself, right? Is looking at the world through an abundant mindset. To do that, you almost got to change your relationship with money, or what's the purpose of money, and
how does it serve your life versus and we talk about it in the podcast, but I think we all grew up with kind of these preconceived, built-in, you could say inherited ideas around the purpose of life was to save enough money to live life,
right?
And that is really an outdated, and I don't know if it was ever accurate, right? It's really an outdated thought, right? Yeah. I think that was more of the Industrial Revolution, right? To get people to go to work and work
coming from the
6 hour
Depression,
right, 6 days a week, 12-hour days, because we needed to produce to make the country great. And it's like, we're just not in that spot anymore. That's not, we've got to declutch. Time doesn't equal money, right? We've got to declutch those thoughts and think about what is our purpose in life, what's our relationship to money. Definitely, financial abundance is something that hopefully we can all experience, but we have to shift our mindset to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I love how he said, to him, there's no worse hell than being surrounded by the blessing and not being able to experience it.
Yep, and I think that kind of sums up a lot of what we talked about.
It's a great conversation. Yeah. It's always surprising. You never know how these conversations are going to go, and that's what I love about doing this is like you always get something out of it, and I know you will too as a listener. Go check out nextlevelmethod.com to learn more about what we offer around energy, elimination, relationships, and purpose. Check out our live events that are coming up, maybe to a city close to you. And if you would, please follow us on your favorite podcast application, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, whatever it may be, and please subscribe, rate, review. It does wonders for us to keep us front and center in this ever-growing sea of podcasts. We'd really appreciate your support. All right, let's get on with this great conversation with Michael Proctor from Leading Edge Financial here on Next Level Method. Well, Michael, so happy to have you on the show. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Richard. So glad to be on, and you too, Matt.
Yeah.
Future podcaster, we help you get set up with all the equipment. You're ready to go, man. So when's your first episode drop? And we're going to hold you to the fire now.
Yeah, I don't know, probably a couple of weeks. We got to get 4 under our belt, and then we'll start launching them.
There you go. You already know.
You're thinking like a podcaster.
That's so right. I love it.
Well, this isn't a conversation about podcasting per se. We want to talk about money today. I think it's one of the kind of the elephants in the room. We never really talk about money when we're talking about energy, elimination, relationship, purpose, but it's always on my mind.
Well, from our perspective at Next Level Method, it is your relationship to it, right?
Yeah, the relationship to money, right?
Right, and then the purpose in that, right? So those two things. So it's not necessarily obviously you probably need to eliminate some things. What's the energy around it? But ultimately, I think money seems to be such a taboo subject,
right?
For a polite society, or you don't talk about what somebody makes, you don't talk about the religion or politics, right? I mean, religion and politics, but typically you don't go around saying, oh, this is how much money I make and this is how much I'm saving for retirement. I mean, that just doesn't usually come up in a conversation between friends right? I mean, it's almost...
Yeah, it's like taboo. It's like, I'm not going to come to your house and say, hey, how much do you make?
Yeah, how much do you make? Now, where do you invest that? What do you do with it? I mean, but I don't know why. That's weird too. I don't know why it's not. I think it should be part of a normal conversation, because I know anytime I've actually had that conversation around money, it's been very enlightening for me. I'm like, wow, that they don't, it's like, oh wow, they're not where I thought they were one way or another. I mean, right, with the relationship with it. So I think let's dive into that today, like, because this is what you do for a living, right, Michael? I mean,
you're a financial planner.
You're a financial planner every day, all day. You're helping people make decisions around all of these things, right?
Absolutely. What you talk about, going over a friend's house and, hey, how much do you make, or how's your 401k doing? How much is actually in there?
Right.
We wind up being the honestly privy to some of the most like deep secrets people have about how they engage with money,
right?
How they interact with their spouse with money, and ways that messes with their relationship.
Wow.
It gets, we have some very, very deep conversation between these walls, and very transformative when people are willing to open up.
So I guess typically when someone comes to see you, they're trying to, you're a financial planner. So they're looking, how do they invest their money? What do they do with their money? I mean, typically, why do people come to a financial planner, I guess? What's the number one reason, or the top three or something?
Usually it's what you just were thinking of. It's, I've got a rollover, I inherited money. We were wanting to get serious about budgeting or our finances. There's some kind of traditional surface level topic that they want to cover with us. And sometimes they want to stick to that. But once we get into a deeper conversation about what is this money for, help us understand how you intend to use this, what objective your money has for you, so that we can invest it accordingly to your needs in the best way, from a tax, an investment selection, a time horizon standpoint. Then we get in deeper, and also more of the probing questions of, if the market does go down, how much does that scare you? And we've got some tools that can help to calibrate that for actually both spouses, if there's two in the picture. Well, I guess you have to have two if you have any spouse. Anyways,
right. We're not in Utah, are we?
Right. Right.
Not today.
Not today.
Can I talk about I kind of morphed to my relationship with money and kind of where I'm at right now? I mean, I think if, and I didn't grow up wealthy. My parents, it was just normal middle class, never want for anything, but at the same time, we couldn't go out and just lavishly spend. My glasses are fogging up because it's hot in here, so I'm going to take them off.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Just get casual, Richard. We're very casual on the podcast today.
But I noticed that, but I was always kind of taught, like, well, you've got to do this. You got to go get the job. You got to save this amount so that when you turn 65 I can go, now I can go
to Maui and
buy the bass boat and fish every day and
exactly.
everything else. And as I started surrounding myself by entrepreneurs, which has been since college, right? So I've been kind of involved in entrepreneurship, surrounding myself with more entrepreneurs. That's when it started to shift a little bit. And it's like, it's more or less about, or the ones that I really admired were the ones that, like, hey, money isn't so much about that, because I don't see myself buying a bass boat or even going to Maui when I'm 60 or 65. I'm always going to be doing something. And so it was this view of money as like, stop stressing about money, because we can make, I think it was Jack DeBoer that told me that. It's like, I can always make more money and find it. But it's like, but he said he started making money more when he attached a purpose to it. Like, why am I doing it? And I think he even said, he's like, well, originally it was like, because I wanted financial security for what? But he says, I never really felt secure, even when I had, so much more. But when I started shifting my mindset and thinking, what can I do with this? The whole purpose of entrepreneurship is to make the place better than you found it and add value and do good things with this money, right? And so I think that I'm always attracted kind of to that consciousness behind money. So my relationship, why I want to make more money, is not so that I can wake up every morning and look at the account and feel good. I want to have a relationship with money where I can actually make the place better than I found it. What do you think, both of you? I'm asking both of you. What do you think when you hear me say that?
I'll let Michael speak first.
I think, I appreciate Mr. DeBoer, and it's too bad he passed earlier this year. But anyways, no, with the purpose behind money, that's really huge. And even his comment to me is so interesting, because the comment he made to you about the security behind money is so interesting, because he had he had done very well for himself. And for some people, there's always an insecurity around money, especially if money is where your security's in. I'm not saying that's his position at all. But for some, they'll never feel like they'll have enough. But I guess maybe there's a deeper level for me is my definition of hell is living in the blessing and not experiencing the joy.
Right.
You know, getting caught up on the negative side of it, where if we can experience the freedom of what we can do and the good we can do with it, and have security in that we're provided for, that we do have enough, we get to, live within what is enough for us. But when we do live in control, we can have peace around that. And, anyways, that's part of our objective when we're working with folks is help them to have peace with what they've got. And and then also to go beyond that and help others too.
Well, you kind of hit it. You articulated a little better than I was trying to say is like, I want to look at, or at least the relationship I want to have is so that it will help me fulfill my purpose. I want to have financial freedom. So it gives me time freedom to do the really important, or what I consider the really important things to me.
Yeah, and as you say that, I have a good friend named Michael Ma, and Michael's a very unique guy and love him to death. He was the best man at my wedding, and don't see enough of him. He moved down to Texas, but at one point in his life, he said, I can do the corporate gig. I've done the corporate gig. I can go around and help people. I get that. But he said, but I just want to go travel and experience the world. And this is when I think he was in his 40s at this point, or late 30s. And so he figured out how he could travel on $1,500 a month and travel internationally, like mostly over in Malaysia and stuff like Asia. And so you could look at that and say, $1,500 a month, how in the earth are you going to travel? But he had actually figured not just travel, eat, sleep, rent places, right? Because he mapped it out. And I'm like, so here's a guy who's living on $1,500 a month, and he's financially free at 50, because he knew how much he had in savings, right? He knew, and if he had to, he could go earn $1,500 fairly easily freelancing. And so, but he had figured it out. I'm like, here's a guy. I know what my income is. I know what my expenses are for the most part. I mean, it's a complex equation. And here's a guy for $1,500 a month, no bills, $1,500, and he can go travel the world. So I'm here working, right? Thinking I'm working towards financial freedom, and guess what? He's experiencing financial freedom. So I'm still on the hamster wheel. I'm still in the rat race, chasing it, thinking that someday if I get enough, if I get enough money in the bank, then I can feel secure. Then I can go do this or I can go do that. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to just circumvent that whole thing, and I'm going to instead of going for, I need, $5,000 a month, $10,000, whatever the number is, right? He figured it out for $1,500. It blew me away, and he did it. I watched him do it for like 6 or 9 months. In fact, he met a beautiful woman, and they ended up getting married. That's the only reason he stopped traveling. Yeah,
I've met a few people that have done that too, right?
Yeah,
they sold all their possessions, they put everything in a backpack, and they solved it. Again, I don't know if that works for them, and it's ideal. But you're right, though.
It was a mindset.
It's a mindset of like, well, what is financial freedom? Like for him, it was $1,500
yeah, exactly.
a month.
Yeah.
And
actually he had a rental, and that was bringing in $1,500 a month. So basically he was like, literally, that's why he was financially free. He literally had enough coming in every month to travel on, and he could go anywhere he wanted. I was like, that's crazy. So Michael, when people are coming in, I guess what do they come in with? And then how do you help them rethink or lean, maybe not even rethink, but just, I'm like, if I'm thinking, I'm going to meet with a financial planner, I come in and I'm thinking savings, I'm thinking retirement and all this stuff, but there's deeper questions, right? Than that.
Absolutely.
So what are those deeper questions? And kind of, if you can, give us some examples of people, obviously without mentioning their names, but of kind of situations that you see coming through to help shift mindsets.
Okay. So I'll tell one story that kind of kicked us off more seriously down the direction we've gone as a firm. This couple didn't really they didn't have kids, but they were tracking so well on their finances that by the time we helped them figure out what they were doing as far as tactically, how we can make the money go further, we're like, well, right now you're tracking to die with $30 million, and if you make these changes, you'll probably die with $60 million. Oh my Lord. And they look back at me and they're like, so what?
So what?
Why should we care?
Right.
We're dead. And, and I'm like, well, exactly. So why don't we recalibrate other parts of your life today so that you can enjoy the life that you have while you have it? Because you're not going to get this time back.
Right.
And if there's ways you want to recalibrate your life to spend time with each other more, you want to travel more, you need to do that. And so how our relationship has looked more and more is helping them to just take the steps they need to move forward on that. I think they put down a deposit on a really cool like electric solar vehicle that they thought was neat. I'm like, all right, cool. They did some estate planning work that incorporated some extended family members. They're surprising a family member with paying off some student loans because he did something they wanted him to do as far as reading a book, something as simple as that. But, now they're kind of feeling comfortable getting outside of their shell financially instead of just sock it all away and live minimalistically. Now they can actually enjoy things more to their capacity, not just that, but also think differently, feel more secure about what their money is, because it's like perspective for them is there's a lot of people out there that wish they could be financially in the position they're in. Yeah. But there's so many people even that, I'm like, hey, I'd love to have what Jack DeBoer had. That'd be cool. I'd buy a jet.
Right.
And yet you have your own jet and you're still potentially money insecure.
Right.
And not enjoying it the way that you could.
Right. And so in that case, you actually encourage them to spend more or invest in their own lives, I guess would be a way to spend, but really invest in their own lives now versus because they were on that end of the spectrum, right? And then I think
put it to work.
Right. And then I think we have a ton of people that are on the other side of that spectrum, which are spending more than, right? Borrowing, leveraging, spending more than what is coming.
There are quite a few people on that side. And again, that one comes down to when you budget, you live within your means, you save what you need to save, and then you can do your thing, like save what you need to save, have a balance between living for today and living for tomorrow, providing for your family today and tomorrow. It's not just one or the other, but it's the whole time. And don't think that retirement age 65 is the end of the rainbow where there's a bucket of gold.
Right.
Hopefully there's something there, but it's not about age 65 and retiring.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's
the journey's the whole way.
And I think that's the paradigm shift as well from kind of maybe when our parents, when the way our parents thought, the way definitely grandparents thought, but 65 became this cultural, acceptable tap out, retire, whatever you want to call that, shift your life. And it really, that's just a number. I mean, you could choose, again, my friend who was in his 30s and he did go back and get a job, and went back because that's what he chose to do. But ultimately it's kind of like, that's just a number, right? What do you want to actually do with your life? And then how is money need to be a part of that need to be a part of it, right? Versus, the goal isn't the goal line, I guess. And I'm just speaking my opinion here, but the goal isn't to see who dies with the most, right? I mean, it's the impact we have in our own lives and our families' lives and maybe even in the greater community, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the obligation. I said, you've heard me say that on the show before, is that I think the obligation we have is how do we make this place better than we found it? That can mean anything for you, whatever that personal making the place better than we found it is. It can be as micro or macro as you want it to be.
Right.
But
well, it's like, I read this book in my early 20s that kind of shaped the way I looked at business, and it was the biography of Andrew Carnegie, right? So Andrew Carnegie, U.S. Steel was the company that eventually he sold to a company and it became U.S. Steel. But, he was the richest man on the face of the earth. I can't remember if it was 1911 or 1920, $356 million, right? In 1920. I mean, that was like far surpasses any, that's like Bezos plus money today, right? And he committed to give away over 90% of it before he died, and he made philanthropy a full-time gig, right? That's, I mean, he built, you go to Wichita, Kansas, you go to any other city, they've got a Carnegie Library. He donated all those buildings, right? And the equivalent of like $2 or $3 million or more today, in today's dollars, but he donated all that. So for him, it became, his full-time work became philanthropy. So to your point, he was leaving the world better than he found it, right? And ultimately the library system was a way for poor people to get access to education. That's why he built it. He wanted people to be able to rise up like he had rose up through the thing. So it's not about, again, he didn't say, oh great, I've got $356 million. Now how can I make it bigger and better? And then when I die, leave it to my kids so it can screw them up. It was, right. It was, how do I make and I think to your point, that can happen on any level. right? It's not
Yeah, it doesn't
about
have to
being a
be-
millionaire, billionaire.
Yeah. The goal
right?
isn't to be Andrew Carnegie.
Yeah, exactly.
But the goal is to, I think what you're trying to get across, Mike, is that, hey, take care of today, take care of tomorrow, but at the same time, what is your purpose? How is your how are you going to relate to money so that it kind of feeds into your purpose? I don't think you said it that explicitly, but that's what I'm hearing from you. Does that make sense? That kind of sounds like what you're doing at your firm, as opposed to the traditional, hey, I'm going to go in so Mike can maximize my return so I can get the bass boat at 65, right? And you're going, no, let's talk about this. What are you here for? What, you got all this money.
I was guilty of that mindset.
Well, we all are. I think.
Until about probably a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, for those that, we can solve having enough money, when it does this and someone's on their deathbed and they're like, wait a minute, I have way more money than I need here, but I did not spend enough time with my kids or grandkids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The last thing I want to do is coach somebody into regret on their deathbed over how they spent their time while they were here.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I even see that I'm a pilot at American Airlines, and I see there is this mindset. I see that a lot of these guys approaching 65, and that's all they know. I mean, even our financial assets and what we have from a planning perspective when we look at our 401k, and like I was looking at mine the other day, and I mean, I'm putting 16% away, which is above the average, right? And I feel pretty good about putting 16% of that away. Mm-hmm. And when I hit 65, it's going to be a pretty nice number. But at the same time, I'm like, in all the literature, my point is all the literature and even some of the pilots that I fly with that are approaching 65, and we do ask those questions like, well, how's your people ask you like, how's because I want to know how I'm doing. And,
right.
And I always say, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm be glad when I get 65, but I'm not going to be done.
Right.
And I guess I'm a little surprised that the vast majority of the people that I fly with, the company, the material, the financial literature that I get, it's like, there's a little meter on there like, well, you might be doing okay. You could do a little more because you're going to need this much more when you're 65. And they got a graph that's showing when my money's going to run out when I'm 85, right?
Right.
That's what it showed me. It says, it told me, like, you may be a little short. And I'm like, well, my money's going to run out when I'm 85. And I'm like, but you're just assuming I'm not going to do anything else from 60. Does you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't know. So my point is it drives that mentality that if this is all or nothing, like 65 is what,
is the goal line, right?
Right.
You can't, right? And I think that's what we have to shift, right? We can't, and and we've inherited it, right? This isn't, we weren't born with, my 2-year-old isn't thinking that when she's 65, she gets to retire, right? right. She's just alive with life, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So give us some other, Mike, if you have a couple other examples.
Yeah. There's one recently that comes to mind where there was a couple and we have some tools that one of them is called a return on life index, and that breaks down categories for each person on how fulfilled they're feeling in different areas of life, which is just helpful to talk about to figure out, hey, what are the hot spots we can focus on to help you get more quickly? Mm-hmm. And then the other one is fiscalosophy, combination of fiscal and philosophy, of course. And that one, we've got 10 different categories that we have them rank on a scale of, for example, debt's an easy one to pick on. Leverage me up, let's leverage as much as we can, or debt free. Right. Where do you fit between those goalposts? And then also, how comfortable are you about where you're at today? And so we have 10 categories with that. And for a couple, we can overlay them to see where the biggest deviations are between the couple.
Oh, interesting.
And talk about it.
Right.
And a lot of times that'll bring to light areas of struggle between the two of different philosophies, how they see things, how they want to operate. And you may have one couple or one spouse that's a total free spirit. They want to live in the blessing, enjoy today, live. And the other one that may want the security and, is concerned about, well, what if I live to 110, which for some people might be a real problem, could be a problem.
Right.
And, so helping them to understand how they can serve each other, how they can invest in each other and really put themselves in the other shoes can provide a lot of healing and get some of the kind of maybe messed up human humanistics we have around money and security out of the way, and make the focus the other person, the relationship. How do we get the most out of this? But yeah, some of what we do really is just getting our hangups around money out of the way.
Right.
Well, I mean, I would say that most of our relationships that go south is probably somewhere around some sort of financial philosophy, right? I mean,
in financial peace, one of the things they talk about is 70% of marriages end around a money issue.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that's just amazing to me that's, I mean, I get it. It's stressful, and I guess it's stressful, and it sounds like it's swept under the rug a lot, right? I mean, it's just suppressed, because why do we have so much shame in our society around money? I don't.
Well, I think it's because
money's the root of all evil type thing, inherited from
maybe,
kind of
but
poor,
it's like the culture
poor interpretation, or.
I mean, because you need it, right? I mean, it's like if you don't have it, life can be pretty miserable.
Well, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying, but why do we? I mean, why is it so? Michael, I think in pre-roll you were talking about, or before the show you were talking about how, you get to have these intimate conversations that we really don't have with other people, right? Mm-hmm. Why is that? Why do we? And I don't know. I'm literally asking during this podcast. I'm like, why with money do we have such a hang up sharing what is going on in our lives? Yet you go to social media, and I saw somebody posting today, they're so happy that they're having their hysterectomy. And I'm like, that's great for you, but that seems like oversharing to me, right? I mean, I love seeing your kids and your dogs, and yes, I'll pray for you. You posted that. She wasn't even asking for prayers, but she just was like, now, this, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. But when it comes to, so we'll share all this stuff that would seem to me that should be highly intimate. And yet with finances, which is typically X's and O's, right? It's dollars and cents. We don't ever talk about it. I mean, it's like I don't think I could count on all my fingers the number of people I've told how much I make a year, right? I would say it's probably less than 5 I've ever told how much I actually make a year, and it varies from year to year. I'm an entrepreneur, right? But why is that? Michael, do you have any insight on this? You deal with this every day.
I don't know, but here's your chance to bust the 5 people you've told out of the water.
Yeah, I'd like to name them now. yeah, right.
I don't know.
Status,
money discussions and how we interact with it is so intimate.
Yeah,
and money takes on a spiritual characteristic in a lot of ways.
Right.
One of the reasons I got into this industry is because when I was in college and involved with the Navigators, they always said, if you want to really know what's important to somebody, you look at their calendar and their checkbook.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do they spend their time and where do they spend their money? Right.
Right. And I didn't think I could probably make a huge living off managing someone's schedule, but I figured maybe we can have some real impact if we go work with money.
Right. Interesting.
I think back when I've been almost married 30 years, and I remember when we first got married, and I was a brand new second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, and we'd dated since high school, and we were on our own for the first time, right? And I was 23, had a real job, respectable job as a Marine Corps officer. Mm-hmm. But I remember the money, and I just remember how, like, oh my gosh, this is real. Mm-hmm. I got an apartment, I got a car. So I had an apartment, I had a car payment, and then all the,
right.
And then that was it, right? But my paychecks were only, at the time,
right.
just wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot left over, and so we had to really sit down and budget and this and that. And I remember where the disagreement came from was because I was the only one making money at the time, and then my wife felt like, well, you're trying to control everything, and it was a control thing from my wife, and I'm like, I'm not trying. I'm just trying to make sure that we,
eat
and don't get into massive debt, right? That was my big concern. And that was the contention with us, right? But she came from a place where, they didn't have money. And so what she saw, so her perspective of it seemed like we had a lot more than what I came from, because she came from, mom divorced, and they were really tight. It wasn't, really struggle with money. And it was always a big issue with her, kind of a shame thing for her, going through high school, worried, always in the constant worry about money. And now there's this security where she kind of saw it as, oh, wow, we got extreme blessings. And I was like, man, we need to get more, right? So it was like, that was like the secure one. And that led to this like, this miscommunication of like, well, you're trying to control. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to, so that's where that's what it was for us. And it was always kind of a huge deal for us until I finally said, look, you pay the bills, right? You do. So, and we did that for a long stretch where she took care of all the finances. Right. And so she saw it, and that helped a little bit for sure. Anyway, just a little exposure to the Ryerson household.
Thank you. We learn more every week.
Glasses are fog. We got to get a fan in here. I'm like sweating. Are you sweating?
No, well, a little bit, I guess. I don't know. You're just.
We're talking about money.
We're talking about money. That's what I was gonna say. We're talking about money. Now you're talking about your marriage. We're getting deep. We've got all kinds of.
You've learned a lot.
I know. I have. I can call you Rich today. You said for the first time, so I'm excited about that. So.
But what do you think about? I mean, have you heard that about like where people see people using money for control and stuff like that? I mean, does that make sense when you hear me tell that story? Does that sound?
Well, okay. So when
I love that. All right, it was like, okay, here we go. Here we go. Now is the real. Right now, here's the real deal. Here we go. All right, let's get on the plane.
Yeah, money brings out areas in people that are sometimes not dealt with, and when we're talking about going down into the just scarcity, okay,
right. Yep.
of if somebody's ever grown up in a household where there wasn't a lot of food around, or maybe it was just a family culture growing up of you work your butt off and you work really hard and you work really hard and you save really hard and you save really hard and I negotiate at Walmart. Okay. So, if I see, there's this a water-soaked box with this little toy for one of my sons when he was like 3 or 4, and I was like, I was like, man, it's for his birthday, and they'd already marked it down, and the guy knocked like another $20 off. Right. I just grew up in this skinflint kind of culture of a family,
right?
But that stuff. Like if you don't get down to, okay, what drove that culture? It was scarcity. It was, we're not going to have enough, so we better make sure we can get everything we can.
Right.
Okay. To the point where when I was in Indonesia, I could negotiate with the best of Indonesians over there over watches they were selling on the street. But that came from a scarcity culture. And when we let that run rampant in our marriage or in our relationships, it can cause some damage and it can cause some hurt and pain. And then you get to where, it's a bit of a tug of war instead of working together, and it can feel like a power struggle. And sometimes it can turn into that when we go to our dark places, but that's where, that's where we just got to work on things and grow and have love and acceptance for ourselves and each other.
Well, I think that's what we're trying to do at Next Level Method. I think you're right. The scarcity versus abundant mindset is I think, something that we implicitly talk about a lot in our material, right? I mean,
definitely.
And like, how do we? And I think for me, it's been the mind shift is like, seeing the world through abundant eyes as opposed to one of scarcity, right? And I know for me, it seems to be when you get in the abundant mindset, everything starts to flow. I mean, not that just by changing thinking, abundance brings abundance, but it certainly gets you started and it starts to rewire things, and you start looking things through a different lens, right?
Well, and I think what Michael kind of alluded to, kind of being grateful for the things we have, leads to typically having more of what we're grateful for, right? So it's where's our focus. So when I'm in a scarcity mindset, everything I'm looking at is from a place of fear. So I'm going, we attract that which, is what we think about, right? What do we think of? Our thoughts attract things.
Right.
I mean, our thoughts become things, literally. I mean, I've thought about this a lot and in many different levels, but everything in this reality that's man-made was a thought in somebody's head first, right? So if we want to just boil it down and say this computer that we're looking at, this desk, everything that we see, somebody had to have the thought to create it. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. It doesn't these things just don't appear outside of nature. They just don't appear. So if we're in a scarcity mindset, we literally are creating, every thought is creating more of scarcity, for scarcity to show up for us, right? I mean, it is what it is. It's just it's a law. And when we're in an abundant mindset, which typically I've found is the fastest way to get to an abundant mindset is gratitude, right?
Yeah.
Because when we're thankful, and even though you wouldn't say that gratitude is necessarily equal to abundance, but when we're grateful for something, it's like the world says, "Oh, you like this? Well, then here's some more of that. Oh, you like that?
Well, because the gratitude.
Well, here's some more of that, right?
And the gratitude starts at least a perspective shift.
Right. Of being thankful for what we have versus, you could have, and I've been around very wealthy people who still have the scarcity mindset. Mm-hmm. And so for them, even though they're making millions of dollars a year, they're trapped in the scarcity mindset where here my other friend's making $1,500 a month and he's in an abundant mindset.
Right.
And it's not that, and you could say, well, if it's just about, who has the most money is the winner. No, it's who has the most freedom, right? Who has the most freedom and happiness and joy in their experience on this earth is kind of the way I am still formulating my mind to, because I came from the other mindset, right? He who has the most wins, right? That was where I started my life. And because I came from a circumstance, or not circumstance, but just life where we didn't have a lot. And so I came from scarcity mindset and still live there sometimes.
Well, I think most of us start out that way probably, because that's culturally, that's how we're taught, particularly of our age, where we kind of grew up in the 80s and the Wall Streets and everything else, right?
The Mercedes 80s is what I've heard it called before. Right.
But I picture it like Michael, I don't know how old you are, but I mean, I think it's like you seem to be attacking the way that you pursue your career and your life with like, well, how can I add value? How can I give back? There has to be some purpose behind what I do, as opposed to like, well, I'm going to get into financial planning because that's where all the money is. I mean, I know people that got into financial planning in the 80s when I was coming of age in college. That's why they got into financial planning, right? Because they wanted to get so many of these. And you go and you look at, you go to a New York Life convention or any of these type of places, right? And see that the people that they're celebrating, right? And look at the guy that gets up to the 60-year-old guy that's been doing this since 1975 or whatever.
Right.
And he's got all the big clients and he's getting, he's feeding on, which is great. But it's almost like it's different when I'm hearing what you're saying. Like this mindset was, it is about more and how much and how big can the bank account be. But what I'm hearing from you is like, well, that's good. But what is your purpose though? I don't know if that makes any sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, I've had a couple clients ask me, okay, Mike, how long is it before you sell your practice and go retire and we don't see you ever again?
Right.
And I'm like, that's an interesting question, because the mindset presumes that money's the goal.
Right.
And money is just a tool. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've got tools I need to go clean out and throw away because I've got a bunch of the same ones. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many wrenches, but the point is, like, you can have as many tools in the tool shed, but if you don't use them for something, what's the point?
Right.
And for me, there's definitely a mindset shift that I'd love to see in our industry in a broader context of how clients are coached around their money. That it's not, selling is not a scarcity mindset. It's not a security type thing where we play on people's fears to get them to take action and maybe buy a product that has high fees. But that we help them understand, here's how money works. Here's what you want to do. Here's how we can help you do what you want to do in a more efficient and more appropriate way, and have more peace. Because when you're dealing with money, for a lot of people, it can easily trigger them to different levels of stress. But when that's going on, it's hard to experience what they've been blessed with.
Right.
And so we want to see people live the best life possible with the time they have while they're here.
Yeah.
Not have the most money when they're cold to the touch. I just don't. I mean, and for some people it brings a lot of joy too, to be able to produce a lot of money, or if they happen to produce a lot of money, and give it away. Right. And I think that's fantastic. And Matt, I love your concept of money as energy. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's a way that we can store, but also disperse energy. We don't need to just hoard it all either.
Right. Yep.
And that might sound a little communistic, but the reality is we don't get to take it with us.
Right.
We just don't.
Right.
That's not how it works.
Well, that's what I love about it. I mean, I don't think it sounds communistic at all, because I mean, I think it does get to the purpose that we talk about here at Next Level is the ultimate goal really is to tap into your purpose. I mean, everybody out there is struggling to find it. The vast majority of people, there's a whole swath of the population and the globe out there they're just going through the motions, right? They don't have the intentionality behind seeking the purpose, right? And I think that's part of the problem. Right? And then when you start seeking the purpose, you're like, yeah, I want to find something meaningful. I want to pay attention to this gnawing that I have and do something with it. And then you realize how hard it actually is, right? It's very hard. I don't care what anybody says. It's very hard to lay down exactly and define what it is you don't want. I could sit here all day long and tell you all the things that I don't want and that I don't like. But it takes a tremendous amount of work to kind of sit there and say, well, what is it I want to do and what is it I really like and what am I about?
Right.
I'm not even done defining that. And I think it shifts as you go on, right?
Right, yeah.
And I'll be 53 here in a couple months, and I don't think it ever really ends. But I think when you go down that path and you start thinking abundance, to me that's an abundant mindset, and that changes your relationship with money, which is, I mean, I'm in this process, right? I'm looking at money differently now than I was 10 years ago, even 5 years ago.
Well, and I was having this conversation with our team at Next Level, like literally the day before yesterday. And I said, you got to forgive me. I came from this mindset of exactly what we're talking about, of achieving and everything. Time equals money, and we have to focus on how we make dollars. And I wasn't talking about at the Next Level company. I was talking about some of the other companies I have and just my own mindset. And I was like, you know what? I've got to declutch that, right? Yeah. I've got to look and say, back to the question I've always heard is, if money was no object, what would you do? And that is your purpose, right? And I said, ultimately, here's where I'm at. I've been, blessed in certain areas, and certainly this has been the weirdest financial time of my life as far as COVID and just the highs and the lows in the businesses I'm involved in. And I said, and finally, I realized that the money that's here and what I want to do the money will come as I lean more and more into my purpose, right? Yeah, and I've seen that over and over, but finally it became actually truth for me this week, which was, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this because it's the right thing to do. It's what's needed now, and I guarantee you the money will flow, because there's an avenue for that. But we've shifted the way we've done our live event, right? We went from a paid event to actually a free event, right? Because I said, you know what, people need this, and we've been given some blessings here. Let's provide this as a service to our community and to humanity, and the financial piece will come along after the fact. But let's focus on helping people first. So, I mean, I think we're all shifting in that space, right? And not saying that. I think the ultimate goal for me, and a lot of we talk about conscious capitalism a lot, right? Is to have your purpose and your finances aligned. And I think, Michael, that's what you're talking about too. It's like, if you've made a lot of money, okay, now what do you want to do with that, right? What do you want to do to add value at the bare minimum in your own life, but hopefully in the lives of the people around you? And if you haven't made a ton of money yet, how do you purposefully want to incorporate that as part of your purpose? How does the money as energy fuel your purpose versus I'm going to make a ton of money and I'm going to wait till 70 and then I'm going to start donating to charity? It's like, well, you could be dead, right? I mean, it needs to be more balanced, I guess is what I'm saying, or that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm feeling.
So in a conversation with a man named Dave Vandergren, he had a really interesting insight. He's like, Mike, he's like, we've got enough. And he's like, the kids need food today. Right. They need vaccinations today. Right. The needs are there. The needs are now. And it doesn't help them if that is all delayed till I'm dead. Right. Essentially is what he said. I'm not, that's not a direct quote, but that's what he was communicating to me. I was like, that's such a, just a realistic way to look at it is we don't need to snowball everything for tomorrow when there's great needs today that we can have impacts with.
Exactly. I totally agree.
Well, again, it goes back to I'm like a broken record, but having that abundant mindset. I mean, and realizing that there's always plenty. And it flies in the face of what a lot of people believe, but I do think to the times, and I go back and forth, I catch myself in the scarcity mindset, but I think back to when I go to the gratitude place, I look around me, And even as silly as this may sound, if I'm doing on a walk and I'm like, look at all this, and I live out in the country in like these wheat fields or whatever,
Right,
and I start looking at all the strands, just the individual strands of it, and just like, look how much that is. Look how big the sky is. Look how this. And when I think like that, and when I don't hold on to the steering wheel thinking, what do I have to do this, to make this, to do that, to fill up this gap or whatever, and I kind of let go, it seems like that's when I get the significant client, or that's when I get it comes out of nowhere, right? Every significant client that I've received, or every significant financial blessing that I've received, it never came through direct efforts of me grabbing the steering wheel and turning to this way. It always came from when I let go and was thinking about what is my purpose, what am I here, what am I do, and thinking of an abundant. And when I say thinking abundance, of looking at myself in abundance, that's getting rid of the negative beliefs and the gratitude, and thinking, yes, I do matter, I do have a purpose, I am the best person for this, these people need to know that, right? And that's not vanity, and that's not arrogance,
right?
But that's just living in that abundant mindset, and things seem to flow that way. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I'm not financially prudent, right?
Right, exactly.
And I don't take steps. I'm not irresponsible, and I do take actions
right.
that will support whatever it is I'm trying to do, my business, and for my family. I just don't sit on the couch and go like this.
Meditate and wait for the dog to run up with the money.
Right.
Right. Right.
Does that make sense?
Where do we get that dog?
Where do we get that dog?
I'm still working on finding him. I've got some Facebook ads out and some posters on some street signs. I'm looking for this specific dog that brings you money.
I mean, what I say is that crazy? I mean, sometimes I talk myself out of that. Like it'll happen, and then I don't believe it. Like the miracle happens, and then in fact, you can read about that in the Bible. Actually, you can sit there with people like a miracle happened, then you do things to talk yourself out of it.
Right, talk yourself out of the miracle. Yeah.
And so I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Well, you can justify. Well, yeah, I heard something about the other. Yeah, I was reading a book, and he was talking about this guy. He was helping him let go, like you're talking about. It's actually called letting go, and he was letting go of all of the beliefs that he had that was holding him back from getting a job, right? And so like a week later. And this guy was a psychiatrist that was coaching him. And so a week later, the guy comes back in. He goes, the craziest thing happens. Last week, my brother-in-law called, and he offered me this job, and it's a great job, and blah, blah, blah. He was like, oh, he goes, oh, so you think that technique worked? He goes, I don't know if that worked or not. He said, but, and so it's like, so often in life, I think, yes, we have these things that we're hoping for, praying for, they come along, and then we can use the mind can use us, I guess, and kind of convince us that it was things other than grace or other than abundant thinking or other, we didn't really attract it. It was pragmatic. It was very, it was very linear, and this is the way it should have happened. So I think that happens. I think the more we see things as miracles, or the more we see things as blessings that were outside of our control, the more we actually experience them, and the more we see life as that way, right?
Yeah, you have to do the work, right? But I guess that's my point. You do the work.
Yeah.
But you never get the blessing through the direct actions of your work, if that makes sense. In other words, just a simple analogy that if I'm a salesman, I have to do the cold calls, I have to do the networking event, I have to go to the Chamber of Commerce event, I have to pass up my business cards, I have to create a website, I have to do all the marketing and everything else. I have to even create a marketing funnel. And maybe you'll get some people through the marketing funnel, this and that, but it seems like all the significant things that happens come through some other relationship, coincidence, phone call, everything else, but that you wouldn't get unless you were doing the work, if that makes sense. So I have to do the cold calls, I have to do this, I have to do all that. If I don't do it, I'm not going to get any of that. But if I do that, then the universe will move.
Well, so one thing that was coming to mind as you guys were talking is my good friend David Case. He's got a podcast called Effective Heart Change. But one of the things he talks about a lot is how we live and experience life through our spiritual flows. And, whether that's, good spiritual flows or maybe some unhealthy stuff, the other side, that's how we're going to experience life. And if we're living in scarcity or abundance, that's how we're going to experience it. And it could be the best blessing that came along in the world,
right?
But we could still be horrified,
right? We could still be in scarcity, right? And be afraid, right? Oh, I got the money, but when am I going to lose the money? right? Or
exactly.
Now what do I have? Now I have the responsibility of the money, or what? Now I'm going to have to pay taxes on the money, right? Or all this, all the crap, right? And it's like, yeah, but wait, you were bitching and complaining when you didn't have the money in your head, and now you're to your point, you haven't shifted anything. You're still doing the same thing.
That's right.
It's still the same anxiety. It's still the same experience. You've just, you actually have what you were praying for. You just didn't even realize it. Or don't appreciate it, I should say.
And that's where it really originates from. We very easily create our own hell that we live in when we're living in the blessing and we can't experience the blessing.
Right.
Yeah, that's the hell.
Yeah, I like it. And so I really appreciate, your take on finances and how you guide clients down that path. I think it's so refreshing, so different than what I've heard before from people in your field. I've had different experiences with financial planners throughout my life, and that wasn't my that wasn't what I was told or talked to about, or taking assessments. I mean, they'd say what's important to you, right? Or what's your level of risk, but it was never kind of like what's the broader picture of what do you want in your life, what do you want to do with your life. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing there, what your firm's doing, and that you're kind of helping drive that process. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's always been about return on investment. It was ROI. It was a certain level, a benchmark, a number. But that's almost like a given. I mean, that's like if I go in any financial planner, that's always going to be part of the conversation. But you're taking it another level, is what I'm seeing from you.
Yeah, and it's easy to get caught up on return on investment, and I don't use that as a cop out to say we don't have portfolios that perform well, but when we take the focus off of that and we put it on how it impacts our life and how it impacts others' lives, then it brings the anxiety down when you deal with money quite a bit. Right.
Yeah. Well, because it puts a purpose behind it. Right. It makes it real. It gets to the heart of why we're here on this planet. It's like living life, right? It's like, what are you doing with your life?
We get to take the gains as a blessing. And when it's going well, it's a blessing, and we get to do more with that. Not, oh man, I missed out on 0.5% compared to whatever index. Right. I'm gonna get uptight about that now.
Yeah. Right. Well, we're excited. Yeah. We didn't know where this conversation was going to go. I hope that we got everything that we wanted to talk about. Is there anything that we didn't talk about, Michael, that we wanted to get across in the short remaining time we have here?
Yeah, they're welcome to, we've got a YouTube channel that they're welcome to subscribe to. I'd encourage them to do so, and we'll continue to add content to that, educational in different ways. We've got a website, Leading Edge FP, as in financialplanning.com. Yeah. And then they can give us a call, 316-768-7526, and talk with anybody that picks up the phone here.
Sweet.
Michael, we appreciate that. Yes. We'll have all of that information on our show notes, and we encourage everybody to check it out. Michael, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Richard and Matt.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Next Level Method podcast. If you found some value in this, tell somebody about the show. Tell your friends, tell your spouse, tell your kids, let them know all about Next Level Method. And go to nextlevelmethod.com to learn more and join our community. Thanks for tuning in.